These Brahman steers were more interested in the clover in centre ring than any competition today, but come next month they'll feature in the first camp draft event ever to be held at the Newcastle show. The 2006 Camp Draft World Champion was among riders putting the venue to the test today.
With all the local shows, if you qualify at those and then get the invitation to come in, there's pretty good prize money, so it'll be something to look forward to.
The show will be held from March 26th to the 29th. Local businesses tried to have the public holiday on the 27th cancelled because of its effect on staffing and trade. But the Show Association says business should see the event as an opportunity.
I think they should realise what this show is all about and the opportunity that it does afford them to showcase their products, their services, their achievements.
The showground is sporting new areas of turf and the complete restoration of the grandstands is almost complete. So the organisers are hoping that the people of Newcastle will plan ahead to support the show in March next year. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The members of Save Our Rail aren't afraid of a fight. They've been battling to retain the Newcastle line for 16 years and they thought they'd won, so GPT's ultimatum caught them by surprise.
And I was quite honestly shocked that a business would come into Newcastle and say, we won't go ahead unless you cut the railway line.
Joan Dawson says the group isn't opposed to development and agrees the connection needs to improve between the city and the foreshore. But with a growing aged population, global warming and soaring petrol prices, they believe the removal of the rail line isn't the best solution. Their proposal involves more pedestrian crossings at various points along the railway line, which won't hold up traffic or trains.
And it would be a wide level crossing with swing gates that automatically closed for safety, so that if there was a train coming, the gates would automatically swing closed.
According to Railcorp, on a typical weekday, there are approximately 2,770 entries and exits at Newcastle Station, while at Civic Station there's about 1,760 rail users. Many commuters are concerned about increased travel times into the city, as they'll have to change to other modes of transport at Wickham if GPT's plan is realised. And the Hunter Liberals have recently completed a survey of Maitland train users who disembark at Civic and Newcastle stations. 50% said they wouldn't use the train anymore if the line is cut.
Well, I won't be catching the train. It's too hard to get up to this end of town.
So what would you do instead?
Drive. Go back to driving.
And it may also inconvenience those with limited mobility.
Not for myself mainly, but maybe for people who are disabled or kids that have their surfboards.
They'd make it a lot worse because we come into Newcastle like every day, so without it we wouldn't be able to come down to the mall and stuff.
And while the Business Chamber supports the cutting of the line, Alan Squire is part of a group of business people campaigning to keep it.
We've seen 100 US cities who've ripped out the rail and now they've spent enormous amounts of money to put it back in. So there's a business lesson there somewhere.
NBN News has completed a face-to-face survey of 45 business owners in and around the mall, and all 45 said they supported GPT's retail development. 51% wanted the heavy rail line cut at Wickham, 40% didn't. Further survey results will be revealed in tomorrow night's final part of the series. Plus, we look to the future, either with or without GPT and the rail line. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
From fabulous formal frocks of the 1920s to Depression-era clothes patched together from household items, the Australian Museum of Clothing and Textiles' new exhibition is a treasure trove of fashion items from yesteryear. Most have been donated from Nell Pyle, and each piece has its own story.
This is a 1910 dress that has always been in our family. It belonged to my mother's cousin.
It's the museum's first exhibition at its new display space in the old Maitland's jail.
Where previously everything lived in boxes and no one got to see anything unless we were doing an external parade, we now actually have the joy of being able to put everything out for the public to come in and see it.
And there certainly is a wide selection of garments on show.
Tell me about these.
Well, these are Victorian garments with the split knickers. because you had all those voluminous skirts and petticoats to lift up, and it was easy to lift them up and go like that and sit.
Each item is priceless. Museum workers are now engaged in the arduous task of cataloguing every piece. So far, they've counted over 3,000. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Graham and Wendy Baxter's superfine wool is the top clip of the season, but that hasn't shielded the Gyra couple from the dramatic downturn in the market caused by the global economic crisis.
We just hope we can get enough to keep us going for the next 12 months.
The money's drying up for buyers, mills and even consumers, especially in places like Italy where this wool is headed.
It requires credit all the way down the line, and the problem is that these buyers are finding it very difficult to get credit.
Some growers' profits are down between 40 and 60% on last year. Several pulled their wool from this week's Newcastle sale, hoping to hang on for better prices.
Obviously a lot of growers need the money, and it's very hard under these market conditions for them to try and hold wool when they have to sell it.
I don't think you can really predict what's going to happen.
Positively, the sale has been getting stronger every day, and there's still one sale left this year, although it could take at least another 12 months before the market turns around.
Growers won't be willing to accept these prices when it's, it's not much far off cost of production.
The poor old wool seems to cop it first, and it's a bit disappointing, but hopefully it'll come back.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
Graduating from the Australian Institute of Sport before captaining the young Socceroos and featuring for Adelaide United, Sean Ontong was considered a great prospect for the Jets. But when a niggling ankle injury turned out to be a break, he spent time at the surgeons, then several months on the sidelines. Now the versatile youngster who prefers to play at right fullback is again running, and he could be sped into the squad for this weekend's fixture against Perth.
So I wouldn't be expecting him to get through 90 minutes, obviously, but at the back end of a game, it might be really helpful for a player like Sean to come on and help us out.
I've only got through a couple of actual full contact sessions at the moment, so I'm not going to get ahead of myself.
It's good timing for the Jets, who desperately need to sort out their form to have any chance of clawing back into the top four.
Everyone's got a chip in regards to scoring goals, and it's important that we have midfielders going past strikers, whether to create or put it in the back of the net.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. After 10 months overseas, Nathan Green's lapping up the little time he has at home. Catching up with his niece and nephews today, the Coal Point waterfront property sure is a long way from his US base in Dallas.
It was a long year this year. Things didn't come as easy this year as they did the last 2 years, so it was a bit more of a struggle. So just good to get home and have a break.
Ranked 110th on the US PGA Tour, the 33-year-old opted to skip the last tournament in Florida to rest and recoup after a season he wasn't completely satisfied with.
Lacked a bit of motivation this year, especially second half of the year. Found myself practicing. I'd go out for an hour and sort of get bored, and usually that's sort of where I've done well. I've worked hard and I've just got to get a bit of that back. I think the game definitely showed that the second half of the year.
Although likely to retain his tour card for 2009, it's still mathematically possible he could drop out of the top 125 money earners. Staying in the mix is a much tougher task for fellow Lake Macquarie pro Nick Flanagan, who, with a ranking of 166, has earned nearly $380,000 in his first year.
We had a lot of meals and that sort of stuff together, and it was just good to have another Aussie there who's, there's sort of three of us. Peter Lonard took him under his wing a little bit as well.
Green will get his troublesome left knee looked at next week with an eye to compete in the Australian PGA Masters and Open over summer. Jessica Phillis, NBN News. From mid-next year, the fate of major projects like the redevelopment of Charlestown Square will be decided by regional planning panels made up of 3 state government and 2 council-appointed members. Planning Minister Christina Keneally says the decision would deliver the New South Wales public more transparency, accountability and certainty about planning decisions. The minister's decision effectively strips all local councils of the power to approve projects worth more than $10 million.
Now we have a new planning minister who has no background, no real experience in planning, has now come in and basically pandered to the development industry.
This is just across the board take away the community's opportunity for input. I believe that you'll see developments approved without a lot of knowledge.
But while councils have condemned the move, developers have welcomed it.
It will get politics out of approval process. In this terrible economic times we've got, the approval process in some councils is quite disgraceful.
Mr McCloy says Newcastle City is a prime example of a council dragging its heels during development approval processes.
You've only got to look at Honeysuckle, where it's managed by the state government. You've only got to look at Mirvac, where they're on the old hospital site, which is going ahead, and you look at the rest of the town and you simply scratch your head.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
This is the first peek inside Cessnock's new community theatre. State-of-the-art and with no change from $8 million, the council has built a performance space it hopes will attract people from across the region. It's built within the old Grace Brothers department store at the corner of Vincent Street.
It does have a 466-seat theatre in it. It will be able to meet local needs as well through the provision of some office spaces, and the Samaritans Foundation are going to move into this building. Our senior citizens are relocating from an older facility into the hall here.
Other rooms can be hired by community groups. A week-long festival of performances will open the new theatre from November the 21st. Meanwhile, just down the road, the old Hunter Water building has been earmarked for a new life as an art gallery. The Cessnock Regional Gallery Group has leased the privately owned building and is raising funds to open the doors midway through next year. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
David McElwain has operated a business in the Hunter Street Mall for 30 years. He's just moved his menswear store 200 metres up the street from his old premises to make way for GPT's $650 million retail development, and he's a strong supporter of the termination of the rail line.
I just feel the rail is just that zipper up the middle that's separating the north from the south end of that peninsula.
But he says he's here to stay with or without GPT's retail project.
Well, business is too good. Why would we leave when it's so good?
In a survey conducted by NBN News, businesses around the mall were asked whether they would remain if GPT pulled out. 68% say they would continue trading, 22% say they would shut up shop. 1 in 5 said they'd leave town if David Jones also closed.
If GPT goes, we're going to have a situation where we've got no retail hut. David Jones is gone, would go, all the small shops are generally closed, and you would end up with a retail ghost town.
And that spells trouble for the Hunter Business Chamber.
If we don't see that happen, the city will go into a period of greater decline, and everyone is concerned, and we don't want that to happen.
The Chamber's vision calls for light rail to replace the heavy rail line between Wickham and Newcastle, a concept which would see history repeating itself in the Newcastle CBD. Newcastle was served by a fleet of 98 trams between the 1920s and 1950s.
If getting GPT to come to the city means that the rail line has to be changed in one form or another, the Chamber supports that proposal.
Meanwhile, Mirvac, which is spending $375 million on the former Royal Newcastle Hospital site, thinks GPT's proposal is another important step towards the CBD's revival.
Whether it's GPT or others, those types of developments are going to contribute so much to this city.
GPT has set a February deadline for government. That's when its board will meet. The developer is unlikely to proceed with the retail project if there isn't a funding commitment from the state and/or federal government to cut the rail line.
The state government's role is not about pulling up public transport infrastructure and investing $160 million into an alternative proposal that is really about satisfying creating an environment that the developer wants to invest in.
Sharon Grierson says the Major Cities Unit, a federal body, has only just been formed, and she believes securing millions of dollars will not be easy. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Having competed at the Olympics, then collecting a silver medal at the World Cup final in September means Michael Diamond has already qualified for next year's overseas events.
It's imperative that we stay right up there with the top shooters of the world and being match hardened. You know, if you're match hardened, you know, you're mentally tough and you'll go some ways in the sport.
Advice he's no doubt delivered to club juniors who at the weekend lined up against Diamond in the Newcastle Trench Challenge at Awabba.
It's always good to compete against someone that's better than you. It makes you lift and shoot better.
That certainly was the case for Wilkinson winning the B division. This weekend, the 19-year-old from Head and Greeter will shoot at a round of the Australia Cup in Sydney, trying to make the national junior team.
The kids have obviously got dreams and expectations of themselves in the near future, and I'm going to try and help them get there.
Not too much though, as eventually clubmates become competitors, and especially fierce around Olympics time.
You always keep an ace up the sleeve, mate.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
The grounds of the CB Alexander Agricultural College near Patterson are some of the prettiest in the Hunter. These days, students learn about life on the land, and interested people have the pleasure of regular displays and open days. But life was less rosy for the 150 hardened convicts who were housed in this building and put to work at Tocal between 1822 and 1840. Now, plans have been approved to turn the old barracks into tourist accommodation.
We're looking at converting the convict barracks back to accommodation after all these years, and we're going to use those in association with the homestead site for weddings and other visitors.
Foundation Day marks the formation of the college in 1965, and today Bushman Bob Dunn treated crowds to a draft horse display, running a harrow over the paddock to prepare it for cultivation. Handling these heavy horses is a dying art in Australia, but just like the plan to convert the old barracks into accommodation, there's plenty of interest in keeping the traditions alive.
Some say the days of the Clydesdale are over, that their days of ploughing are done, but you could be sure they've never saw Tocal's ploughman Big Bobby Dunn.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A troublesome hamstring appears to be behind Benji Marshall, and a good thing, given he has plenty to look forward to. The 23-year-old has been named Kiwis captain for their match against England tomorrow night.
Probably one of the highest honours of my career. When I got told, I was sort of a bit surprised, but at the same time happy.
Happy was what Tigers fans were back in round 10 against the Knights. Marshall's two-try return from injury made for good memories of Energy Australia Stadium. Whether that remains depends on England, and one POM in particular.
I'm pretty good friends with Adrian Morley, so I hope he doesn't try and take my head off.
The Newcastle Jets are on the road this week in what's among the A-League's toughest away trips to Perth.
It's a hard pitch to go to, you know what I mean? And yeah, obviously the trip can come into account, but look, we have to put that behind us, and we have to concentrate on ourselves, and we have to start putting some points on the board.
Youth leaguer Jesse Pinto has been promoted to an extended squad for Sunday's match. The Jets and Glory level pegged on the ladder with 10 points each. Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
It's a buyer's market, and don't they know it?
In the 2 months that we've been looking, we've seen homes that have been, say, around about the 450 mark drop quite dramatically from 450 to under 400,000, which is very exciting.
A steady stream of potential investors inspected this home at Cooks Hill this afternoon, and it's a similar story at open houses across the region. Real estate agents say consecutive rate cuts and a boost in the first homebuyers grant are behind the market upturn.
The last 2 interest rate reductions has given great confidence back to the marketplace, and we'll see that filter on into sales probably early next year.
But buyers are being cautious and sticking to their budgets.
It'll just make the repayments probably a little bit better and a bit more comfortable to sort of live.
The financial climate continues to hurt many though, with mortgagee sales and auctions still a regular occurrence in the Hunter. What's more, some buyers are having to come up with a 20% deposit to secure a home loan.
We've got a lot of mortgage insurers that have gone out of business over the last 12 months, so it isn't easy for everybody to get finance.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. "3,000 random breath tests have been conducted in the Hunter, and police say they're disappointed with the number of positive results.
It's no surprise that this operation is on. It's very well advertised. I say it during every operation. It's not only an offence to drink and drive, but it's also dangerous practice.
Nearly 24 drivers have been caught so far. At 1:20 this morning, police detected a man in Hamilton driving with a blood alcohol level of 0.165.
He would be well affected and by intoxicating liquor, and that would have been just a conscious decision to drive.
And motorists be warned, RBTs will increase over the next few months as we head into the festive season. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Much like Nellie's neck, the New York City Marathon was an itch these Paralympians just had to scratch, rounding out an awesome campaign for Christy Dawes and Kurt Fernley, the latter arriving home to news of a second Young Australian of the Year nomination.
It's been a perfect year and, more than what we were after.
But it wasn't without struggle, and in Christy's case, her third placing in New York provides the ideal finish to a year which tested their mental toughness.
I felt a little bit gypped coming back from Beijing, so I was just determined to show the girls that I could still be up there with the best and finish with a podium.
Only now are they enjoying the spoils of competition. Kurt grabbed gold while Christy collected crystal in the form of a Tiffany & Co plate. Both were made to work for them, though. In near-freezing conditions, they finished up to 15 minutes behind their previous marks. Kurt says it was the slowest marathon he's ever raced. The 27-year-old then rang the Wall Street bell to start share trading, and for Fernley also signalled the start of a well-earned break.
I'm looking towards Saturday night. That's about as far as I'm planning. I'm looking forward to catching up with friends and looking forward to just continuing to relax.
Mother Nature hasn't been kind to the residents of Mile Lakes. First, she clogged up their river mouth with sand and sediment, turning the once pristine waters murky brown. Then today, when they tried to do something about it, she reminded them who's boss. While the showers scared some off, more than 150 people united on the troublesome sandbank, and together they dug.
It just really goes to show the concern of the local population in Tea Gardens and Hawke's Nest, just how serious this problem is.
All this sand means the river isn't flushing properly. That's created low salinity, which causes disease and mass fish kills and spells disaster for oyster farmers.
You just can't pick up stakes and shift somewhere else, so we rely very heavily on the water quality here.
These residents and thousands more have signed a petition that was presented to Parliament, but the Mile River Action Group says state government representatives have declined all invitations to inspect the blockage.
I'm hoping the Deputy Premier, the Minister for Environment, Carmel Tebbit, listens to what they're saying and gets some real advice on how to fix this problem.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. Boating offshore could land you that big jewfish, but there are extra challenges for those who head out to sea. New South Wales Maritime regularly conducts safety checks, but it's now starting to raise awareness of changes to a key safety system which will come into effect early next year. The International Method of Monitoring Distress Signals, or EPIRBs, will soon require vessels to carry a different kind of device.
The old analogue system will be turned off as of 1st of February. AMSA are upgrading to the new digital type.
Skippers are being urged to dispose of old 121 beacons responsibly.
The conditions can change rapidly out there as well, so they need to have all the right equipment to make sure they get home safe.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Willie Mason was once accused of being disrespectful when apparently snubbing the haka, so imagine the outcry from Kiwi fans when an entire team turned its back. It must have rattled New Zealand somewhat as the Lions scored just 4 minutes in and at one stage enjoyed a 16-point buffer. The Kiwis clawed back though through skipper Benji Marshall and Lance O'Hire, the playmakers setting up 3 second-half tries to Manu Vatuvei. In Rockhampton, the Tongans finished their World Cup campaign with a 48-0 win over Scotland. Knights winger Cooper Vuna scoring a double in the 8-try romp.
In early 2007, the then Health Minister promised Labor would cough up $10 million to redevelop Maitland Hospital's emergency department.
This expansion will be a doubling of the size of the Maitland Emergency Department, so it's a very large expansion.
And while the development application's been approved by the council there, the money is yet to be delivered.
Funds have not trickled into Maitland yet for it. We all appreciate hard decisions have got to be made. We're all facing those tough decisions when it comes down to financial management in every household. But my feeling is that you don't touch health.
A further $10 million was pledged in the June budget for the third Hunter River crossing, but again, it's yet to be seen. Similarly, the expansion of the Cessnock Correctional Centre from 450 to 700 beds was originally expected to be completed by 2009, but work still hasn't started. They're among several Hunter infrastructure projects that remain in limbo as the Rees government looks to sort out the black hole left by the failed power sale. Robert Coombs doesn't expect there to be any money made available for Swansea Bridge, while Craig Bowman says sites for a police station at Raymond Terrace and an ambulance station at Nelson Bay haven't been settled. Most of the Hunters state MPs have expressed concern about changes to the school transport subsidy.
If they really want to hurt working mums and dads who are just eking out a living and trying to raise their children in suburbia, this is the way to do it.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
You can hardly accuse the farming sector of hogging it. Drought, diesel prices and other debilitating production costs often leads those on the land to question the long-term viability of their livelihood. But with cattle getting lost amongst the clover in recent months, confidence also bloomed.
We've had a great spring. There's still a lot of feed in the area. It's drying off and we're crying out for another fall of rain right now, but still in comparison to many other years we're far in front.
Oh, they have all the food around. Plenty of food, clover, ryegrass, natural grass.
Many are hopeful that hangs on, so they can hang on to stock until the cattle price recovers from jitters caused by the global financial meltdown.
Some of the cows and bullocks have dropped back considerably in price. We're just starting to see that improve here a bit today, as I think they find where the market will bottom.
Normally, a lower Australian dollar would mean export heaven, but there are a few worrying signs, with reports some overseas importers are struggling to pay, leaving tonnes of perishable meat stuck on foreign docks. Other buyers are testing the fine print, trying to take advantage of the slipping dollar.
Some of the people they're exporting it to wanting to get out of their contracts at the higher rate of the Australian dollar and get back to the 60 in the 60 cent bracket, so it makes things considerably cheaper for them as well.
On the upside, Meat and Livestock Australia figures show record tonnages heading overseas in October, thanks in part to America buying up Aussie beef. Penny Evans, NBN News.
because experience shows that once an exploration licence is granted, and that work will involve millions of dollars, that the mining companies really regard that as the first stage of mining.
Sometimes it's good to show a bit of passion, I think. I think it sends a good message to your players as well.
In a match that really was hands-on, both teams were guilty of losing their heads early, but Jet Joe Wheelhouse was first to pay. A well-timed Tarek Elrich pass put Wheelhouse back on course, Joel Griffiths on target, and Newcastle in the game. It wasn't the case down the other end when a mistake from Ante Kovic saw Perth pounce. And neither did the Jets, back in front just before the break. Perth lost captain Jamie Coyne over this challenge on song, and when Daniel Piakovsky returned serve, he was sent too. 10 on 10, Sean Ontong made his long-awaited debut for the Jets and was an instant target for Scott Bullock. A match riddled with spite already, it only escalated when Jade North was penalised to give the Glory a clear shot on goal as the hosts produced the ultimate square-up. Perth celebrated the draw like a win, while Newcastle commiserated as if it had lost, both sharing the points and a few post-match words. Adam McIlwright, NBN News. Whatever the result against Ireland, Fiji has already achieved what it set out to do.
We made the goal at the start of the World Cup to come first in our pool, and we've reached that goal, and so we're all excited.
Receiving running repairs, it's on the inside where Knights centre Wes Nkwama is showing strength as skipper.
With the leadership role that I've had to take, like being the captain and just being one of the few NRL boys in the squad, it's definitely something that I'll hopefully take back.
Should Fiji beat the Irish, the Pacific Island nation will then play the undefeated Kangaroos in the semi-final.
Everyone wrote us off at the start of the World Cup, but to get here is just a big rap for the boys, yeah.
Newcastle's Fijian flyer among them, Aku Uati putting others on notice when scoring 3 tries early in the campaign against France. An out-of-towner took out the Port Macquarie half Ironman with Queenslander Cam Watt winning overall. Of the Hunter triathletes, Redhead's Nathan Stewart came in 5th place, while Boyd Conrick was first out of the water but ended the day in 10th. And an uneventful finish to the Newcastle rounds of the 16-foot state skiff titles cancelled due to a lack of wind. Officials are yet to decide if it will be rescheduled during the Sydney heats in a fortnight. Belmont's Kieran Humphries is leading the series. Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
An unassuming vase of poppies took centre stage at today's service around the cenotaph in Newcastle's Civic Park. People of the modern-day Army, Navy and Air Force took part, alongside veterans from various conflicts and members of the public. The laying of wreaths and tributes highlighted the 60,000 Australians killed in the Great War, but groups like Legacy, who currently care for over 3,000 war widows in Newcastle, say sadly the numbers continue to grow.
Cater now for the people, widows of people may have been killed in Afghanistan or Iraq or in the Solomon Islands or in East Timor.
At Maitland, Mayor Peter Blackmore paid his respects before a group of veterans and onlookers at the cenotaph in Maitland Park. Meantime, a book has been published tracing the military history of the Hunter, recording 150 years of local reserve defence forces.
It's got details of all of the current reserve units in it. It's got details of all of the military infrastructure here during World War II, Singleton, Greta Camp, Williamtown, Rathmines, Port Stephens.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
With the budget black hole bigger than some of the open-cut mines in the Upper Hunter, the Treasurer has once again turned to coal to generate some much-needed revenue. The government will mine $1.3 billion in royalties over the next 4 years, coal paying 95%.
However, in recognition of the importance of the mining industry as an employer in our regional areas, the government will maintain a tier structure for mineral royalties and will not introduce a super royalty on coal as has been done in other states.
The Minerals Council says New South Wales risks taxing the industry into oblivion while failing to address capacity issues at ports like Newcastle, and the Hunter Business Chamber agrees.
And this is probably the last thing that mining companies want. They'll take these sorts of decisions into account when they're making investment decisions.
The electricity sector reform will now include selling off sites earmarked for future power stations, including in the Hunter.
If that land is to be sold, then I would question what are the future plans for baseload generation within New South Wales.
Around the region, the F3 link to Branxton didn't make the list for priority funding, but will remain under consideration. The Port of Newcastle will delay dredging around the Mayfield and Walsh Point berths, defer channel improvements and indefinitely put off construction of the cargo distribution shed. Cessnock Prison will now be run by contractors, but the 250-bed expansion will go ahead. The future of Nelson Bay's ambulance station is uncertain without Commonwealth funding, and RTA driver testing offices across the region will be consolidated. However, protected projects include the $212 million redevelopment of the Newcastle Mater Hospital, although it's almost complete, and the upgrade of Maitland Hospital's emergency department. Penny Evans, NBN News.
Craig Ray has been in the force for 24 years and is the new head of police at Lake Macquarie. While he's only been in the job for a week, he's already got a clear idea about the crime areas he'll be targeting.
One of the major things I'll be getting my head across in a very early piece, and the Commission has made it very clear that alcohol-related crime is to be our focus.
To do that and reduce the region's overall crime rates, the Commander has a plan.
It's certainly all about using intelligence, getting a good crime management unit, intelligent unit together, and ensuring that we're being proactive in terms of targeting our local and active criminals.
While he wouldn't comment on the command's police numbers, the superintendent did say he's not fazed about sharing duty officers with Newcastle City.
To me, I see that as a positive in terms of I can get my duty officer to focus on my core business here.
And he's no stranger to the region.
This is my third tour at Lake Macquarie. I've been here previously. Prior to leaving and going down to Sydney and working as a commander down there, I was actually attached here as a duty officer.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. It doesn't look like a gym, but despite appearances, strenuous exercise is taking place. These participants are involved in a series of mental gymnastics as part of an Alzheimer's Australia study called the Active Cognitive Enhancement Program.
Lots of people think that you start to lose your cognitive abilities as you get older. This program, I think, is challenging that idea.
In fact, the program is trying to prove that with regular mental exercise, the brain is not only capable of retaining cognitive functions, but even improve them with age. The multi-centre study is taking place over 10 weeks. Participants are now halfway through, and some are already feeling the benefits of regular memory tests and exercise.
I really noticed a difference in being able to memorise things that I need at the shop, in little things. I do tap dancing and I found that it's helped me remembering sequences.
I have to say that it's challenging, and sometimes it's better and sometimes it's a little bit worse.
The program's ultimate aim is to slow down the onset and effects of dementia. The study will be evaluated by the School of Psychology at the University of Tasmania. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
According to the Bureau of Statistics, nearly half of Australians aged between 15 and 74 don't have the literacy skills required to meet the demands of everyday life. That's a staggering 7 million people who could really use some help with their reading and writing. The best time to teach these essential skills is during childhood, and with that in mind, St John's set up PALS, its program to aid literacy.
We look at the Department of Education and Training syllabus and how literacy is taught in the classroom, and our volunteers can support all aspects of it. That's reading, writing and talking and listening as well.
Today, trainer Elena Sutcliffe showed potential volunteers how they can provide the kids who need it with that little bit of extra help. Mother of two, Pippa Roundtree decided to join up so she could use her spare time to make a difference.
Seeing the difference in the children from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and knowing that you can make a difference is fantastic.
In his 15 years as a volunteer, Kevin Goodwin has helped out countless kids. An experience from his days as a Justice of Peace inspired him to get on board.
A young couple came to the factory one day. I'm a retired master printer. Came to the factory one day and asked to sign a paper. And I found out that they hadn't read the contract properly and they couldn't read or write properly. And I thought, well, if this is the adults, what's going to happen to the children?
Details of how you can join the program are available through the NBN News website. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
This is pre-season training, Army style. After being welcomed back with a leisurely game of tennis last week, things have hit new heights at Singleton Army Base. It had a few on the ropes. And you wouldn't usually see an Army instructor offer help like this, as the Knights ran, rolled and waded through a tough second day of boot camp.
Mate, it was pretty tough. I don't know how these blokes do it for a living.
Danny Wicks has taken a new approach to his day job. Having already shed 8 kilos, he's aiming for more after teammates forced him to face facts.
I think I got to a point where I had a good look at myself, and a few of the boys come up and said, you know, you'd probably go a bit better losing a few kgs, and sort of sunk in then, I suppose.
Luke Walsh has his own battle. He's barely stopped since last season as he fights to regain the halfback spot.
My major goal is to get my number 7 jersey back. I want that more than anything. While everyone else was having a break, I thought I better get into it and got a lot of catching up to do.
One notable absentee this week is Kurt Gidley. He's recovering well after having knee surgery last Friday and is due to report back for night's duty around Christmas. The camp ends tomorrow afternoon, but not before some more surprises.
They don't know it, but they won't have much sleep tonight, certainly. They'll be tired and happy to see the back of this place, I'm sure.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. He's found himself in worse places than this and found a way out before. And Gary Van Egmond was up to the task yet again today. But even his club concedes it's tough to ignore his on-field tirade in Perth on Sunday night.
While we don't condone it, we understand his concerns. I mean, he hasn't had, he's got a good track record, Gary, so more of an aberration rather than anything else.
Although instructed not to speak on camera today, Van Egmond denied he made a derogatory remark to Perth's Adrian Trinidad, but did admit to describing the Argentines' efforts as a dog act in drawing a penalty. His alleged dive will be the crux of Newcastle's argument in defending their coach's frustrations to the FFA.
There's history with this player involved, and I think he just had enough, and particularly at the business end of the game.
Daniel Piakovsky's days at the club could be up. Suspended for 2 games after his send-off, there's only 1 week left on his current deal.
Hopefully there's a chance to prolong that. I'll probably know by at the end of the week what the future holds.
It gets no easier for the Jets' W League side this Saturday. 2 losses and under strength, they play ladder leaders Sydney FC.
When the chips are down, things just don't seem to go your way, and it seems like, we're never going to score. But it's just a matter of being enthusiastic about the game,